access that, and they're gonna wanna access it with trucks and stuff like that, so it's got to be paved. And I'm sure that we'll get something when they come in for land use on that.
But further to the east, isn't the Schnitzer property? Doesn't their driveway come down and around? So if someone missed turning into this parcel, isn't there?
Yes, it extends down even further.
It goes down
and
further and around to the Schnitzer property.
But they'd be on private, I mean, theoretically, they'd be on private property.
The phase one, yes, they tee into this roadway, the Tonquin Court. They have to take it as far south as they can to make up to get rid of grade. They can't come off of their site; it's too steep. So that's why there's a retaining wall, a fairly significant one, along the wall, or along Tonquin Court on the east side, all the way down and probably around the corner. Now, there is discussion about where to take an east-west extension of Tonquin Court, whether it's going to be between the phase one, phase two, or at the furthest extension between of phase two, which we still are working on. And that hasn't been solidified as of yet, but we're looking at it.
But for right now, the Schnitzer property, is it going to have any driveways onto the Laurelwood?
They will at the very southern end of it.
So that's going to be an opportunity if someone sees a brand new road and they kind of drive down it to see, like, let's see what's down there. That's where someone could turn around.
They could still come up to the end of the Schnitzer site from that. It's still access, yes.
Like you said, it'll be private, but
It'll be private, but it is access. It's not going to be a completely dead-end street. And Kerr will want to have access to it,
So-
even for their temporary use of whatever they're doing down there currently with existing facilities, which I take it is just storing of construction material.
So what we do in residential areas so first off, I would envision, just for the public, it should be a dead-end street or no out.
It is.
Right. But when we put barricades in residential areas where the street's going to eventually go through, I didn't see a condition in there that says we would be putting a barricade out there that says future roadway.
That's usually dealt with through the construction plan approval phase. We don't get down to that type of minutia at the land use. Is it feasible? Yeah. Do we get the road in? Yes. Well,
But a barricade would be signed appropriately that says
yes.
a future roadway.
We have a detail. We have a standard for it. We'll get it in.
Questions? I guess we go for question.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for LU 2021-015 SP Oregon Street Business Park based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions of approval contained in tonight's staff report, including conditions of approval B2, P1, P73, F9, and C23.
I second.
I don't think there are conditions P.
Not sure what those
Yeah,
first two were.
they're just can you pull your bullet points up off that slide? Because we're not approving. These are page one.
Okay.
So would you like
Page.
them?
I'll amend that to page 1 of the staff report and page 73 of the staff report.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve LU 2021-015 SPVAR Oregon Street Business Park Site Plan as amended and updated in the staff report this evening. Any other questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Anybody want a 2-minute break before we go into the next hearing? Okay, well then we will move 2 minutes? Nope, okay, then,
We have had citizens waiting here long enough. I think
Yeah,
we can
okay.
count.
so we are going to roll right into the next one, and all right. So the public hearing on Sherwood Boulevard multifamily land use case file LU 2022-006 SPVAR is called to order. I'm now going to turn to staff for the hearing introduction.
Thank you, Chair. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, 15 minutes. Then there will be questions by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. Applicants, 30 minutes. That's split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application, 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application, 4 minutes each, and then rebuttal from the applicant with the remainder of the 30 minutes, if there is such. Then there is no other testimony will be taken from the public or applicant unless the public testimony period is reopened. And then we'll have final comments by staff, and then questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and then deliberation by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of this hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Staff will recognize people who have signed up to speak 24 hours in advance to provide testimony virtually. When it is your time to provide testimony, please state your name and address for the record. If you are in the audience this evening and wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit it to planning staff. Those are the blue forms that we handed out earlier. And the chair will recognize people who wish to speak. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record. Any questions should be addressed through the chair. In reaching a decision on the application, the commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. The staff report is available online and at City Hall. The staff report was accessible to the public 7 days prior to this meeting, and testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue preclude an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again, with enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I would like to ask members of the commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of your ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing this evening. So with that, Commissioner Waidola.
No, I do not have any ex parte communications, biases, and I plan to participate tonight.
Commissioner Winborn.
I plan to participate. I don't have any ex parte or any conflicts.
Great. Commissioner Bantz.
Kind of a minor ex parte, I suppose, but recently my wife was mentioning that she was seeing a bunch of chatter on Facebook about opposing taking down of trees and a call to come to this meeting. And she doesn't really follow exactly what we're doing here all the time, but I was able to, of course, connect that to this application. So I'm aware of some of the chatter on Facebook around that, organizing some folks coming here. Oh, but that doesn't produce any bias or anything. Yeah. And then I do intend to participate tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Kai.
I have no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and plan to participate tonight.
Commissioner Lampros.
I have none of those areas.
Commissioner Montalvo.
I have no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest and plan on participating.
And Chair Simpson.
I have no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest and plan to participate in this hearing.
And does any member of the audience wish to challenge any planning commissioner member's ability to participate in tonight's hearing? Do you want to challenge their bias or?
You need to come up to the microphone and state your name for the record.
Okay, testimony? Okay, great. So with that, I'm going to turn to staff to present the staff report.
Thank you again, Erica, and good evening, Chair Simpson and Commissioners, for our third presentation this evening. I want to thank everyone in the audience for their patience. It's a long night for all of us, but I really appreciate you sticking around and giving testimony this evening, so thank you for that. We have the applicant here as well, of course. So Eric Rutledge, Associate Planner, City of Sherwood, giving the presentation on LU 2022-006, Sherwood Boulevard Multifamily. The applicant is requesting approval of a Type 4 site plan review and Class A variance to develop a 9-unit multifamily building in the high-density residential zone. Application was routed to affected agencies and public notice provided in accordance with City Code. At the time I created this slide, it was 8 comments from 8 individuals and then 1 group letter signed by 16 individuals. I believe we've creeped up just a little bit since then, so probably about 10 comments from individuals and still the 1 group letter signed by 16. But yeah, more testimony than we normally get on this one. The applicable criteria are shown on this slide for reference. I've communicated this to kind of all parties involved, but I just want to make very clear during the staff presentation that the Planning Commission decision and the staff recommendation are based off of the applicable criteria. And so, yeah, the staff report has detailed findings on how staff believes the criteria are met. Happy to answer any questions on that. And just a reminder to you and everyone in the audience, the approval or denial of the application is required to be only based on this code criteria. And we do have additional information for the record that was submitted after release of the staff report. So you have a second packet in front of you. Starts with Exhibit C7. So this is the other packet that you have. And that includes, and I believe it is actually in chronological order in this one, Exhibit C7 all the way down to Exhibit C13, all testimony on the application received all the way up until about 3 or 4 o'clock today. So we can certainly pause if anyone would like time to look at this after the staff presentation, but I will go over a summary of the testimony and sort of summarize all of it for you. And here it is, the public comments received so far. So most in opposition to either the overall project or certain aspects of the proposal. So kind of covered a whole range of issues, but just to list a few of them, the proposed variances that are requested and I guess the impact of those proposed variances, the height and the mass of the building, the fence and the buffering between properties, the parking supply, the shared driveway access and the flow of traffic, the public utility tie-ins, tree removal, construction noise and disruptions. There was more, but these were kind of the main ones. So I will go through the staff presentation, and as the sort of code comes up that addresses, that comment or that concern, I'll sort of speak to that. And then if you have other, other concerns, if you share the concerns or you just have questions on the code as it relates to the concern, we can get into that as well.
I think there was one public comment that sort of stood out, and that was the fumes and smoking and fumes from barbecue, because the residents do have some lung issues, for example, and breathing.
Okay.
So I thought that was a significant issue.
Yep, we can address that. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Lampros. So getting into the details of the site location is on Sherwood Boulevard. The address is 21742 Southwest Sherwood Boulevard. So of course, Old Town Sherwood in this direction to the south, and Highway 99 to the north. So here on the east side of Sherwood Boulevard. The existing conditions, it's currently a vacant site. This is looking south on Sherwood Boulevard, so coming from 99 to downtown Sherwood. This is the view from the street, so here's the vacant site here. Power lines overhead. The Douglas fir trees are here. Another tree located on the property here that we've received comment on. Storm facility to the north. and of course the roadway on the other side, and then landscaping, some mature trees, and the Stewart Terrace apartments here behind the site. I'm sorry. How about that?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Zoning and surrounding land uses. So the site is zoned high density residential. The staff findings on the density are between, the requirement is between 7 and 10 units. So just want to make clear that if we received a proposal for anything less than 7 units, 6 units or less, it could not be approved. So this site, based on the size after the right-of-way dedication, unless there's a zone change concurrent with it, which there's not, the approval has to be between 7 and 10 units. Just want to make that clear. The surrounding zoning, high-density residential to the east. This is a current single-family neighborhood, but it is zoned high-density residential. The properties on this side are actually used as high-density residential. We do have medium-density residential high on the opposite side, and then low-density residential. And then just along this corridor, the Sherwood Boulevard corridor, it starts, of course, with commercial zoning as you come off Highway 99, and then you sort of get into this medium-density, high-density corridor as you make your way down. And then, of course, you get into the institutional public with the schools before you get into Old Town Sherwood. Just want to clarify, I think it's a really good slide to clarify the height limitations. I think there's been public comments on height and potentially some concerns from the commission on height. So there's kind of two different things. There's the existing development and what the height actually is of the existing development, and then there's the zone and what the zone actually allows. So if any of these property owners were to come in for an addition on the home, vertical, or new construction on any of these, the height limit in the HDR zone is 40 feet or 3 stories. So that's a subject property in these ones. And then the entire corridor, you can kind of see the intent here along the roadways was to have a higher height limitation through the zoning and just higher density as well. So for these yellow properties here, the maximum or the height limit is 35 feet or 2.5 stories. The proposal for this project, the final height is 30 feet, 30.5 feet roughly. So just want to make the point, just from a very basic zoning standpoint, that the proposed height of this building, A, meets the standard of the zone, but also is less than the what is allowed in the zone across the street of medium density residential high. The actual existing development, that's what this slide is intended to show. So again, multifamily to the east, another relatively large multifamily project to the east of that as well. Both these projects would be larger than what's proposed here. We do have, even though it's zoned high density, this is a existing single family residential neighborhood, and kind of have a mix in here of duplexes along this road here, and then single family. It was kind of a mix of single family and duplexes in here. So while these are not, most of these are going to be single story as they exist, the zoning code allows up to 35 feet on both sides of the roadway. And the city, if any of one of these property owners came in for, an addition to their single family residence, they would be allowed to go to 35 feet, and you guys wouldn't even look at it. It would just be a building permit. Here's your permit, 35 feet. So I just want to make that clear and provide context, given the concerns that we've had around height. In the development standards, so the site is irregular. This blue box here is intended to highlight that. So here's what is required by the high density zone, and here's what's proposed. So the minimum, the minimum lot depth is required to be 80 feet. So front to back, how deep is the lot? 80 feet is the requirement. After the right-of-way dedication, this lot's going to be 81.5 feet. It's a 9-foot right-of-way dedication. So really close to the minimum here. But when you look at the lot width at the front property line, the requirement is only 25 feet, and the actual final width is going to be 260 feet. So really wide and not a deep lot. And you can see the code actually thinks the opposite is going to happen, that the lot is going to be deeper than it is wide. And so just to sort of show that sort of the irregularity of the lot as it relates to what you might assume a standard lot would look like. But at the same time, it meets all the standards. The lot does. This red here is what the requested variance is. So there's a requested variance for the front yard setback from 14 feet to 9.33 feet. So here's the site plan, landscaping shown in green. The blue is the property line. Here's the rear drive aisle. Tuck under parking shown in white, and then the actual usable livable area on the ground floor shown in gray, and then of course 2 stories above the ground floor. Pedestrian connections for each unit to the sidewalk, open space on each side and in front of the unit. I think this shows pretty clearly the right-of-way dedication, so current right-of-way line, and then the final right-of-way line, so that dedicated area is not available for development. And then just a summary of the variances that are requested. So A and B here along the front. So A would be the front yard setback, 9 feet 4 inches proposed, and the requirement is 14 feet. And then the other one in the front is for the visual corridor along an arterial, so that standard is 15 feet, and the proposal again is for 9 feet 4 inches. And then in the rear, C is for the parking lot landscaping reduction. The standard is 10 feet, and the proposal is for 2 feet. And just to provide some context, sort of how staff is seeing this, given the depth of the site, if you were just to do some simple math of the underlying code standards, 15-foot visual corridor, 20 feet for emergency vehicle access, and then really any parking, you're likely going to have parking along the rear as opposed to in the front, and so with that parking comes a 10-foot wide landscape requirement as well. So you have 15 plus 20 plus 10, 40, 30, 45 feet. So 45 out of the 80 feet are taken up by basically setback and fire access requirements. So on this lot, it leaves 35 feet for parking and for the building pad without a variance. So I just do that math to sort of demonstrate the challenge of the site as it's oriented this way. In terms of access and parking, so the plan is to share vehicle ingress and egress with the Stewart Terrace Apartments here. So vehicles would come in this way. They would need to cross the outbound traffic to make this turn into the site, and then it would be one way as you continue, and then you can turn left or right out of here. We did receive public comments on the flow of traffic, and so just to clarify the few reasons why the proposal is for this configuration as opposed to the other. The first being that we anticipate most of the trips are going to come to and from Highway 99, and having the turn in here and the egress here, you're going to have your outbound traffic, sort of speeding up to, travel on the roadway, and these people are going to be turning in for the same site, turning in sort of, against the outbound traffic. And so in order to work best with the highest demand of the traffic flow, this incoming traffic would come this way, past this driveway, come into the site here, and then they could go back out to Highway 99. So the destination, where the trips are coming from is one of the main reasons why it's oriented this way. The other reason is because you have a curve in the street here, and you can kind of see that the buildings are oriented in a way to be maybe not 90 degrees, but sort of, oriented towards the right of way. And so when you're traveling along the road, really from anywhere, you see the front of the building. If this were ingress here, these buildings would need to be, in order to get the tuck under parking, all the buildings would need to be reoriented this other direction. And if you were coming in to town on Sherwood Boulevard, you'd basically just see all the sides of the building. So sort of an aesthetic reason for the flow of traffic based on the tuck under parking as well. So those are the few reasons. I will say that there's not, based talking with our engineers, there's no major safety issues or anything with reversing the flow. It just kind of seems like the most practical design. And I'll just say that the stated concern from the public and mainly from the Stewart Terrace residents is that people coming in here are going to have to cross the outbound Stewart Terrace traffic. How this would work is that the people that are turning would simply yield to the people that are going straight. And you know, that situation is all over. It happens right here on the site as people are coming out. These people coming in are making a left turn here. And so this situation already occurs on the Stewart Terrace site. So we understand there are concerns, but we don't see a major concern based on the design and so how it actually functions and how drivers actually act and are required to act on the road or on private property. In terms of the building design, here's the front of the building. So again, 9 vertical units, ground floor entrances. The code that was applied to these standards are the site plan review criteria. You just adopted a whole bunch of residential design standards. That does not apply to multifamily projects. These design review criteria and the site planning code is what applies. So the standards there are kind of 101 of urban design, that the primary front entrance are located and oriented towards the street, that the building has significant articulation and treatment. There is a requirement that you have a cover for each of the ground floor units, and that buildings are located flush to the street, with the exception of the setbacks and visual corridor. And then just a very minor correction to the staff report. I guess that's an important one, but minor, that the actual 120-day deadline is September 30th, 2022. And with that, staff recommends approval of LU 2022-006, subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report dated July 5th. And as always, you do have options for this evening. Approve the application based on the findings and conditions in the staff report, approve the application with revised findings or conditions, or deny the application with revised findings. And I will say that we do have time for a continuance on this one as well. So if more information is needed, revisions, whatever you're looking for, we can help you get there, and a continuance may help us get there as well. So that concludes the staff presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions of staff before we call the applicant up?
I have one question just to clarify. So the existing entrance into the Stewart Terrace property, that driveway is currently shared by both property owners. Is that correct? The property line here represented in red, so
Yep.
So they have half of it already.
Yes, and the we did get and it's included in the applicant submittal, a easement to sort of finalize and sort of fill out the rest of the area that's needed. So the easement originally was just intended to serve Stewart Terrace, and so they actually talked to this applicant. Worked with the Stewart Terrace owner to sort of complete the easement requirement so they can actually come into their site. But yes, it's currently shared. So part of it is on this property, yes.
Vice Chair Kai.
Can you go to the rendering slide? That one. And what design standard or criteria applies to this property?
Yep, so it'd be 16.90 site planning. And then it's the same standards that would apply to straight commercial buildings or mixed use buildings outside of Old Town. So Cedar Creek Plaza, those commercial buildings, really any new commercial building or new multifamily building is subject to the same standards under site planning, and we can look at that code if you'd like.
Yeah, to me, it just seems like it's missing an element of either a material change or cultured stone or something potentially like that, which I generally know is either included or an option as part of the design standard. So
Yeah, does everyone have their packet in front of them? So like the staff reports, not the applicant submittal, but the actual staff reports. So packet page. It's going to be in the 700s, probably.
Oh,
714, 714. So it starts on 713 and goes into 714. Give people a second to get there, but I'll just read it in the meantime. So there's A through C that they would need to comply with. A is about the primary front entrances located and oriented towards the street and have significant articulation treatment via a whole bunch of architectural terms here. Facades, porticos, arcades, porches, portal, forecourt, or stoop to identify the entrance for pedestrians. I think they meet that. And then I think what you're probably interested in is on 714C, down at the bottom. The architecture of the buildings are oriented toward the pedestrian and designed for the long term and be adaptable to other uses. It has prohibited materials, aluminum, vinyl, T11. And then street-facing elevations have windows, transparent fenestration, and divisions to break up the mass of any window. And the rest is about sheltering for the pedestrian. So that's it. That's the standard. So the few areas that I think get to your question, probably A, having significant articulation and treatment on the front. And then C, street-facing elevations have windows, transparent fenestration, and divisions to break up the mass of any window. I think if you were looking for something more, you may be able to condition it. I think it'd be good maybe to ask the applicant if they're willing. If it's one more building material, I think that's completely possible. A request of the applicant. If the applicant wasn't willing to voluntarily do that, then we could likely put a condition of approval on here based on the standard and put it somewhere under here if the commission were wanting to go in that direction.
okay, thank you.
but in thinking about the reason for a variance and that the impact to the community, providing more pedestrian scale and breakup would help provide that opportunity, right?
Yep, and that gets into a different section. So my comment to Vice Chair Kai was just within this code. I think you could probably do that. The statement is that there's not enough fenestration or not enough architectural doodahs based on A, B, and C. Okay, Yeah, we could probably get the right architectural term to fit that condition under.
not doodahs.
And then in addition to that, they are requesting a variance to the front yard setback, and so we can take a look at that code as well. There is something that says, if the hearing authority can place conditions of approval to mitigate, for the request of the variance. So I think I'd want to take a close look at that before I actually say, yeah, you could put under that code, but it could probably come under either one.
Okay, great, thank you.
Before we go on, and I really hate to do this to you because I usually call you before I do this, but there are some typos on here.
Okay, you're gonna embarrass me. All right.
No, I didn't mean to.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, go ahead.
It's not like you didn't have enough to do.
Yeah, not
Go
like
ahead.
not like we already read 4 of these. So on page 714, in the first sentence of the analysis, it should be Southwest Sherwood Boulevard.
Yeah, Southwood Boulevard, yep, okay.
On page 720, just the last sentence, the utility area will be screened from Southwest Sherwood Boulevard and the by.
Okay, thank you.
I don't. And then Biggie 728. I think. The math, total without guest parking equals 15.25. Guest parking required is 15.25 times 15%. And then it should be 15.25 plus 2.28. It all says 12.25 on my, instead of 15.
Yeah, that's an important one, thank you.
And then 737. Under the analysis, it references exhibit C3, and I believe it should be B3, Bravo.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't call you beforehand.
No, I like to get it right too, so I appreciate that, thank you.
It's kind of, this might have been this wasn't the 1 o'clock in the morning voicemail I left you for the other one. I have to get my thoughts together. Anybody else have any questions for staff before we call the applicant? All right, then let me find my script so I sound smart when I say it. And allow staff to move the cord. So I do not have any blue cards, so I can't even mispronounce the applicant's name at this point. So do we have blue cards for the applicant? Okay.
We can get one before the evening's over.
All right. We'll get one, and these are. What is this? These. Okay. All right. So. And push the button, just push and release, it'll turn green. There you go. And just start with your name and address for the record. And if you just give it a minute, staff will get the PowerPoint set up so that we can see.
I'm Gretchen Stone. I'm with CB2 Architects. We're representing West Coast Home Solutions with this project. And
I'm Spencer Emmerich with CB2 Architects as well, and we have LEI Engineering if you have any questions.
yeah, we have a couple people from the civil engineering design side of things. So if there are questions related to that, they're here, then they can help as well. So thank you, all of you, for being here. Eric, thanks for that staff report. We don't have a whole lot to add to that. I think we probably just want to maybe clarify a few things. And before I forget, the building height, it varies in height. And so it's about 29 feet, 28 feet at its lowest, but it's actually at the highest point, it's about 35 feet. And then I guess related to that, we recognize that we are the only 3-story building proposed in this area. However, just to kind of add some context to that, to the south of Stewart Terrace Apartments is Cedar Creek Apartments. And there's several buildings. They're all 2-story buildings, I believe. And those actually, even though they're 2 stories, they actually range in height from about 29 feet to 32 feet. And so there are other buildings in this immediate area that are similar height to what we're proposing, even though they're not necessarily 30 feet. And related to the Cedar Creek, the kind of northeasternmost building on their campus is less than 20 feet from the property line, and it abuts a single-family home. And we are 30 feet or more from our rear property line, where there is a mix of two-story and single-story buildings. And we're actually closer to 90 feet from the single-family residential properties that are located northeast. And then I'm not sure if I should reply to the testimony that's already been given, but I can, and maybe it'll help a little bit. Related to the setback question. So the reason that we are asking for a reduction in the front yard setback and the visual corridor is that currently the right-of-way doesn't meet current standards, so the city's asked or required that we dedicate 9 feet of right-of-way. As a result, in order to provide that emergency access behind the building, make sure we have adequate parking on site, we're just not able to do it and meet their density requirements. And so even though the building won't meet the building setbacks of 14 feet for the building setback and then 15 for the visual corridor, it'll actually appear that it does because the street is not being widened currently. The city at some point, I guess maybe that'll get widened, but the right-of-way doesn't allow for it currently. And so our actual setback to the existing right-of-way will be closer to 19 feet. And then to the actual street edge, it's almost 30 feet. And so this...
As you can see in this document, you can see that this outline right here is the outline of the existing building to the south, which is actually looks to be a little bit further forward compared to our frontage.
So essentially, we're not asking for necessarily preferential treatment. I realize that currently the right-of-way or their property line is the current right-of-way line, but that could change in the future if the street's widened. So again, we won't meet it once we dedicate right-of-way, but visually, if you were just looking at it, today, the street not being widened, it will be perceived that it does meet the setback requirements. I think in addition to that, this building has an articulated facade, and so at its closest point, it's 9 feet 4.5 inches, and that would be this. Sorry about that. Sorry, this unit here, this corner of the building here, is 9 feet 4.5 inches from the future right-of-way, but it steps back, and so there are places where this building is actually more than 15 feet from the right-of-way. This is like 17 here. So again, we're trying to provide as much, not just articulation, but also as much setback as we can. Related to that, to the north of this development, which I don't have a slide for, is the city's stormwater facilities, and then there's the single-family subdivision. They're the backyards of the houses on, I think it's Kita Court. Their fence line is on their property line, and so currently that is 40 feet from the center line of the street, and our future property line will be 39 feet from the center line of the street, but our buildings will actually be set back further than that. So they have fences, so they don't actually, the landscape corridor, there is none. There is none currently because they have the fence blocking their backyard. And I realize that's allowed, and our situation is a little different just in terms of the orientation of this building towards the street. But when this is all developed, if the street's not widened, we're going to have, this is about, I think this is about 12 feet. We're going to have a sidewalk, and then we have another 9 to 15 feet here. The other thing is we're relocating the sidewalk to what would be the future sidewalk location. With this, the city's asked us to do that. So currently there's a curb line sidewalk at this location when this property is developed. The sidewalk is going to be relocated to the desired location by the city, and then we're going to have street trees along that sidewalk where there's no street trees currently. Sorry.
Just to show the street trees a little better, I'm gonna zoom in. We have the landscape plan.
And then, kind of in addition to that, we've got a lot of trees here, plantings, and we're adding a lot of trees. I know trees are a concern for some folks, and we can appreciate that. And unfortunately, just because of the site configuration where the building needs to sit, there's really no way to save any of the trees that are on site. I believe we're taking out 10 trees, but we're planting 24 on site, and then I think there are 8 or 9 street trees, so we end up adding 20. And then related to that, just as it relates to the Stewart Terrace apartments, I know that's a concern. There are 5 or 6 trees on their side of the property line that are mature trees that are going to remain there, and they actually provide quite a bit of screening even to the site now. And the fence that currently exists here, I know we said it was going to be maintained, but we've learned from the residents that it's not 100% solid and that it's not in great shape. And so this will be replaced with a 6-foot vinyl fence that's solid to provide some additional buffering. Plus there is a hedge planned for this location as well. And I can't remember what the plant material is, but it is a species that would grow to 6 to 8 feet tall as well. So this would be, while not the 10 feet that is desired, there will be a physical separation there, and it will provide buffering. Related to your question about fumes and smoke and barbecues, the decks for these units are on the front of it. The second floor is where the main living and kitchen is, so it's likely that if people are going to barbecue, they would barbecue on their decks, which are facing Sherwood. The other thing too is this building will actually buffer Stewart Terrace from fumes that are on Sherwood currently because of the height of it. So yes, we're adding some units here and there'll be some traffic here, but it'll be a lot less than what they're currently experiencing. And does anybody have questions for us?
You answered my first question, which is the city's asking you to move the sidewalk. So where we're used to a sidewalk being straight up against the curb, it's going to be pushed back. Okay, so that...
Our original proposal actually showed it as a curb line sidewalk, but staff reviewed it, and again, and it's logical because at some point the street will be widened, and this way the street trees won't have to be removed. The new street trees, they'll be able to remain in their location, and the sidewalk will be in the location that the future sidewalk will be on either side of the development.
So when you plant these trees, they'll be at a point to where the new not take them out when or if they widen Southwest Sherwood Boulevard?
That's anticipated, and we can make sure that they're sited that way at installation. It's hard to tell on this drawing.
Yeah, it's pretty sad when you see trees that grow for 5 years and then all of a sudden they have to cut them down and then put in little teeny tiny street trees next to it if they just put the right trees in the right place to begin with.
Agreed. And so these would be sited so that they, again, would remain in place. And they're trees that are on the city's approved street tree list.
Okay.
And they're appropriate to be under those overhead power lines.
Right. So just wanted clarification, and I was tracking the single family homes in part of your testimony. I wish everybody could measure from the same place, because every time we turned it was setback, front yard, all the different variants. But from the center line, I get the center line. So from the center line to the single family residence back fence is 40 feet.
Correct.
And then from the center line to the closest point of your articulated buildings is 39 feet.
Actually, no. That'll be closer to. Let's see if I wrote this down. I think it'll actually be closer to 40 feet. Or no, I'm sorry, 50 feet.
So from the center line to the front of your building is set back 10 more feet than the fence that's there, and then
Yeah.
and then the center line to the single-story building, the existing building that's on this plan, that's the 50 feet that.
It should be 50 feet also, yes.
Okay, so thank you for using one measuring
Yeah,
point, the
yeah,
center line.
yeah.
I know where the
So-
center line of the road is. So.
Yeah, so south of that existing driveway, Stewart Terrace Apartments has an existing single-story building, and that's shown,
Right, I see that right there.
yeah, here.
And that's
And
50
so
feet from the
if you
center
draw
line.
this line, it's roughly, it looks like our corners of our building might be back a hair more than they are. But if the street's ever widened, we'll essentially have a similar setback. The only difference is ours will be more articulated, so we have areas where it is further from
Okay.
the right-of-way, and theirs is more of a flat facade or plain.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate you getting dimensions so that we're all from the same
Thank you.
beginning point. Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
I do, a couple of questions. Number one, that I'm just seeing now is the numbering on this slide here of each unit being 10, 11, 12. What does that pertain to?
Those have to do with the amount of parking.
Oh, thank you. It
requirement.
was a continuation of parking. Thank you. Sorry.
Sorry, I
Second
should've
question
known
is, with has the applicant looked at other configurations for this where using fewer units so there's less variances required?
We wouldn't, even if we reduce the number of units, if we reduced it by 2 units, we still would have a similar configuration. It wouldn't change our setbacks because the building is going to be a long linear building regardless. It's just the site just isn't deep enough. I think the other thing too, and I know we talked about this being an emergency access, by putting access back here that meets the fire district's requirements for width, it allows them to respond to, worst case scenario, a fire, without having to try and fight it from Sherwood Boulevard. So they won't have to block the street. They won't have to deal with these overhead power lines. They would be able to pull on site and then be able to be back here to fight the fire. And that's something that, again, if we didn't have to provide a 20-foot wide drive aisle essentially for them, we would be able to provide greater setback to the street.
Yeah. Sorry. And just your name and address.
Jamie Van Ochtemal with LEI Engineering and Surveying of Oregon. Address 2568 19th Street, Southeast Salem, Oregon. To add to your layout options and different things. So if you increase the rear setback to what's required, and you increase the front setback and landscape area to what's required, we could condense units to make them narrower, but then we end up with a parking situation where the entirety of downstairs or the ground floor unit is all parking. So you get into a situation where you have no living space under, even if we could get to density, which I'm not sure we could with the current configurations that we have to get to 7, I believe it is. So.
The other thing too is this building isn't very deep, so even the footprint of each unit is pretty small to begin with. So I don't even know that you could accommodate. They would be micro units, if you could even make that work.
Hey, could I ask that everybody use the microphone?
Sorry about that.
It's just to that point. So, what is the square footage of these units? What's the range?
I think it's from 13 to 1,500. Let's see here. About 12 to 1,300 square foot.
All right, thank you very much.
And that's on 3 floors.
Right, yeah, and if it's plus or minus, that's fine. It just gives me scale. These are not 4,500 square foot massive. Okay, thank you.
How many bedrooms was that then, typically?
7 of the units have 3 bedrooms, 2 on the 3rd floor and 1 on the 1st, and then 2 of the units have 2 bedrooms with a small office on the 1st floor.
And the all those units with the first floor, whether it's an office or a bedroom, there's no bathroom on the first floor. So likely that room would not be used as a bedroom for the most part, unless somebody really liked running the stairs.
So it kind of sounded like this last one on the left here, I'm just gonna call 18, even though I know it's the parking space. That's the only one with the setback issue, or are there more than that? It's the 9-foot.
No, the leading corner of each of those units, so they're at an angle to the street, so that leading corner in many cases is less than 14 feet. And then in most cases it's 10 feet, but a couple of those units are less than 10 feet.
I see. So it's not just dropping that last one puts the rest in compliance. I see.
No.
That's why you're saying you have to make them all skinnier or shorter or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, shallower.
Yeah. Any more questions on that part? Anybody? Okay. One of the concerns that seem to keep coming up in testimony has to do with this driveway and the left turn in. And, Eric, I heard you talk about kind of that's already happening back there. Have you guys, in your experience, and, you've probably done design things like this before, what do you think the traffic is really going to be like there? I mean, we have, 9 units, probably a couple cars. I think this is designed for each. And what's the inflow outflow looking like per hour? I mean, how bad could it be? These cars turning in and needing to turn left there. I mean, is it constant, or or do you have anything to support that, or studies?
I do not. Minor in general. I mean, you can think of a 9-lot small subdivision. How much traffic comes in and out of it? Very minor in nature. We could generate some trip by table, that type of thing. But 9 units of this configuration is going to be very, very non-substantial.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
I guess going to the use of the driveway, how many units are in Stewart Terrace? 29. And do you know how much stacking there would be from Sherwood Boulevard to the entry into your project? Is it 2 vehicles? Is it 1?
I have not looked at that. I believe there would be room for 2 vehicles, but we'd have to confirm that.
To get in or
To get in, yeah, because if
On
they're
Flamingo.
waiting to have other folks come out, we want to make sure they're not queuing into Sherwood Boulevard.
oh, I see, in this
Yeah,
driveway.
into here.
Well, actually, that kind of makes, so one of the comments was they can't face the other diagonal direction because the traffic's just going to be so heavy that they can't cross coming out and around. But now I'm hearing, oh, it's actually pretty darn light. Just every once in a while a car comes in.
But I think also
Sorry.
The spaces along the back property line, are those open for any guests or units to use, or are they reserved corresponding to the particular unit, since there's 9 spots, 9 buildings, or 9 units?
So we're required to provide, I think it's 1.5 per unit for parking, and then so 3 of those spaces, 2 or 3 are associated for guests actually.
Okay, so the only spots that are reserved for a particular unit are the ones contained within the building, the unit itself.
So we would need to sign the parallel parking spaces so that they would be assigned to a unit. But in theory, there's 2 or 3 spaces for guests, so those wouldn't necessarily be assigned to a unit. They would be open spaces.
Okay. And then my other question were, if a majority of the commission felt it were desired, would you as the applicant be agreeable to additional visual improvements or design iteration for the front of the property?
second building material.
Yeah.
To that, we would, be open to some revisions. Ultimately, we work for our client, and he would have final say on those revisions. With that said, the majority of the buildings and houses around this area are all lap siding, which is what's shown. So, to that degree, it would be wondering how much revision you would be requesting.
It's hard to. It's hard to have a sense of kind of where we could add some additional details or materials without it. I mean, the building, because of the amount of articulation, it's sort of hard. I hear what you're saying. I'm just not sure where we could add, whether it's masonry or something similar to that. You know, obviously it would make sense to maybe add it along that first floor, but where it would break and how it would break and really be effective and not look, for lack of a better term, clunky, is a little bit hard to say at this very moment.
And I think that that's something that the commission would obviously leave to your discretion, but that's along the lines of what I was thinking. Just something to break up the 3-story massing, just to help potentially have the second and third level, visually recede, whether, it's an inclusion of an additional material that kind of helps provide that illusion of, forward and back.
So, we're not designing a building for you, but we do have, I think where the commission, we did a lot of work in our residential design standards, but they don't apply to the multifamily area. And when we came to these types of buildings, separating the first floor with belly bands, painting, or some other material so that there is a pedestrian scale look to the first floor. So I think that's...
yeah, that's definitely what I'm getting to. So,
So, could that be achieved? Maybe we use a different siding type, maybe portions of it, or maybe, I'm just throwing this out, I'm not saying this would work, but in areas, and then the horizontal lap siding and others that would maybe define the first floor a little bit more. I mean, I guess an easy way to do that would just be to add some banding, some horizontal banding that would that could divide the second and the first floors, because at the second and third floor windows, we have a different treatment there to kind of break that floor up a little bit or elongate the windows so they feel a little bit more grand.
In addition to Commissioner Kyan, on the same note, is the east elevation and the west elevation, the side bandings or something for the side, I think would be, that's going to be, you're going to see that wall as you pull down Southwest Sherwood Boulevard. So I'd like to tag that onto Commissioner Kai's comments.
yeah, and I think the different options that you're bringing up, potentially could all work. I myself personally, I don't think it's up to us to dictate, how to achieve that. I think it's best for us to leave that to you, to decide, what aesthetically is pleasing to you all as the designers and everything.
I guess my comment would be if we direct that be a condition of approval within the variance, we would need language crafted that the staff would be able to objectively review and approve at the time that the final site plan is brought in. So if the direction and the condition were added, incorporating both Commissioner Wydola's and Vice Chair Kai's comments about banding other materials or items bringing pedestrian scale similar to the residential design standards in the other zones, is that a condition that could be crafted?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with residential design standards, so I'm not sure exactly what's in there. But Erica, do you have any thoughts on bringing in something?
Carrie's like,
my advice, having done this in other jurisdictions with respect to these conditions that you're hoping are going to break up massing, would be to actually see an applicant's proposal for that change. There is time in the calendar to accommodate that. And I think drafting it in the abstract may well lead to disappointment. And I want to try to avoid that disappointment. I mean, that's my advice.
Thank you, and time frame being what it is. Thank you. All right, any other questions of the applicant? Or any other, we have not called for testimony, so you'll have an opportunity to rebut. Oh. All right, so I have, and these were handed to me in an order, and if your group has a particular order and I don't call for the correct person, you are welcome to let me know that someone else is speaking first. And before I call for people in the audience, I need to check to see if anybody signed up 24 hours in advance to testify virtually.
Nope.
All right. So the top of the stack is Sabrina Bear. And then we have everybody start with your name and address for the record. And then there's a timer on the wall. And everybody gets 4 minutes.
My name is Sabrina Bear, and I live at 16518 Southwest Glen Eagle Drive in Sherwood, Oregon. And I'm opposed to this. Anyway, here's the problem that we will have. There'll be more traffic and danger of getting ran over And there is a blind lady that keeps going back and forth on that street. She either goes from Glen Eagle to Glen, how do you do that? From, what is it, south to southwest? Anyway, and also she goes on this one where they say there's a blind person, okay? And I'm worried about her because she's almost got hit twice. And there'll be no privacy for anyone on any part of the streets. All of the people that I have talked to, they said that they were very upset about it because people will be looking into their backyard, into their private areas, and it's not going to work. But anyway, plus they'll be using Glen Eagle, southwest Glen Eagle, and or 10th Street for their family or friends, because I don't think it would be only 3 people, 3 cars. And they will be cutting down a 150-plus-year-old maple tree and so many other beautiful trees that's over there. And the ones that lives in Stewart Terrace, the beauty is gone, and it'll be gone forever. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Oh, come back to the microphone.
One more thing. That tree that I was telling you about, the maple tree, that's my prayer tree.
All right. Pamela Shelton.
I just want to say I don't know how this will be applicable because I've heard some things that I didn't hear before. And I am just going to say them, and whatever you do with them, I hope it's for the good. Oh, sorry. Pamela Shelton, 21754 Southwest Sherwood Boulevard, Apartment 1, Sherwood, Oregon, and I live at Stewart Terrace. I would like to address, I was going to start from the other end, but since we were talking about this, I'm very concerned about the driveway, as are all the residents. We are all older people. I know it's surprising, but very, up to the age of 89, 95. Many of these people are disabled. We have 2 blind people in the neighborhood, 2 women. The people are not as quick, I guess, on their feet. So we have a lot of people that walk because Sherwood is walkable. We love that. But with that driveway the way it is, they could be hidden from a car that is trying to exit. The other cars are coming in and they cross in front of those, and the people maybe let them and someone is walking alongside. There is a lot of danger in the way this is done, and I don't see why it cannot be switched so that they come in. As you were saying, they were saying it was going to be too busy, but then it's not busy on the other side. People could come in from the south entrance or south driveway and go out the driveway that, yes, it has been a shared property, but it has been our entrance and exit this entire time. And so the part that they own is actually, or it's my understanding, I should say, has been used for like a couple, 2, 3 parking spaces that will be gone to make room for everybody in there. But I'm very concerned about the way that is set up. not only for the traffic, which these older people will have a heart attack if some child runs out, which brings up the other part of it, where the children are going to be playing are just a few feet, probably it's only a 3-foot area from the side of their building. And I don't want to call it Glen Eagle Drive. We have a problem with that. It's our driveway. It is not a street. So the children are going to be playing right next to the driveway, and there's not going to be any fence. That is a problem. There's not going to be any fence to separate our garbage, so it's going to be right next to the parking. Since I'm on the parking, I want to mention that the parking, even though there'll be space, as they're saying, between the ends of the apartment complexes and our property, the parking will be 2 feet plus what we have to, which is 10 feet, the required 10 feet, to our back bedrooms. And that's at the first floor. All 3 floors will be able to look in our apartments, and the people that have 2 bedrooms, which is the only other ones, I think there's 4 or 6 of those, and they will be able to look straight into their second story and vice versa up to the 3rd story. We will have no privacy. They will have no privacy. And thinking that those people are going to be on the patios, those people are going to be in the back because that's where some area is going to be to join other people. There's not going to be enough room for them to really enjoy on a patio of something like that. So I'm just very concerned about the way it's situated. I believe there would be another way to put in that many buildings or even more if they weren't in a construction or a what do you call it? Commercial. They look like commercial buildings to us. They do not look like our residential area. And we'd like to keep that. We know they don't have to be duplexes, but there must be a different way. Also, I want to mention, as I was saying, that we have a lot of people that have health issues. That's what our residence is for people that are disabled and seniors. And that's me.
That is you. Barry Kennedy.
I want to thank Erica and Eric for their cooperation and help with this, and they were kind enough to provide the applicants lengthy application, but their review of it as far exceeds theirs. In fact, my printed out, I think, killed a few trees in the process. So I'm in opposition to this project. I've lived here 54 years. Back in the 80s, I used to be in your seats, but we met at the Murdoch. There was no building right here. This was built later, and then later I became city council. I was the chairman, just like Gene is, and we were all trying to bring to Sherwood, maintain the small town, encourage single family, reduce the number of apartments, but HR 2001 that has been recently passed takes away a lot of the authority of the local community to do that. And so I submitted in writing my objection. I said I read the WCHS application proposing. This is the one I just showed you. This one right here. And complex of 9 units on a 0.48 acre. Now my house is 16518 Southwest Glen Drive in Sherwood. It used to be 210 Northwest until they changed the numbers in Sherwood. It's 0.75 acres. You are trying to squeeze too many units in too small of a space. That is the problem. All these problems, whether it's setback or number of parking places, that piece of property is too small for a multi-family, and you're trying to squeeze too much in. There are 4 large Douglas fir trees, 1 cherry tree, 4 blue spruce trees, and an over 150-year-old silver maple. Sabrina and I measured the circumference of it and did the calculations, and based on the diameter and the species of the trees, and came up with about 150 years old. One of the oldest trees in Sherwood. Sherwood was originally Smockville, and 1892 was when they incorporated the name Sherwood, and we had our centennial when I was on the city council, and I was the chairman of that in 1992. So you do the math, and we're over 130, about 130 years old. Okay? You are killing something that lived far, far longer than the Sherwood came here. If you tear that tree down, which I understand that the arborist that hired by WCHS said keep all the trees that are off site. This maple tree is not on the property site. It is at the corner of where the terrace, Sherwood Stewart Terrace, it's right on the corner. It is essentially a street tree. But it's 150-year-old. The ones you're going to be putting in are only baby trees. So why tear down, and why not keep it up? You can trim it back. PGE trim it every year to keep, because the power line's going through it. Anyway, am I already reached my limit?
It did, but you can wrap up your thought. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I propose this development is totally incompatible with surrounding single. It will add to an existing traffic congestion. I believe the city needs to declare the maple tree on the city's right-of-way tree and acquire the plot to be a city park for Glen Eagle. If not, it will result in the residents of the apartment using Glen Eagle to park their cars. The children of Glen Eagle now have to play in the streets. We feel this effort to urbanize Sherwood with high-rise apartments and cut down the trees that make Sherwood beautiful is wrong. And we have the Sherwood Adores Trees team members asked the Planning Commission to preserve these trees, including perhaps the oldest living tree in Sherwood. I agree with the arborist report that all off-site trees need to be preserved, including the 150-year-old maple tree. If this apartment is approved, I recommend that a pedestrian crossway with a traffic light be provided due to the increased traffic on North Sherwood Boulevard resulting from the development. I recommend that there be at least 13 parking places be provided by the developer as required by the ordinance, 1.5 per unit, since the garages under the units can be used for storage instead of parking. I recommend the City Planning Commission and Council not grant WCHS the requested setback variance and deny their application.
Thank you very much. Sally Carlson? It's up to the commission. You guys let her
Yield time?
yield time. Yes. We will let you yield time.
Yep.
My name is Sally Carlson. I live at 21754 Southwest Sherwood Boulevard, apartment. I'm one of the two-story people. I live on the second story. And one of my issues up there is that behind me is the drain, the city's drain, the floodwater thing, and then on the other side of that are residents who have barbecues and fireplaces and all of that. I prefer to open my window at night, and often I get a smoky bedroom because of all the fires, and so my concern with this property is the barbecues and those kinds of things, but I understand they may be using the front part. That's okay. But I also was listening about the sidewalk change and this business of putting grass up by the street and then the sidewalk and having trees there as well. There's a bus stop out there. And without any trees and without any grass, the bus still sometimes doesn't see me because the bus driver is concerned with cars coming and going from our driveway. So now we're going to have more traffic in that driveway and more people trying to turn in there. The bus comes along, they're looking for the left-hand turners, they're looking for the right-hand turners. Here's a tree, here's the grass. Where's the bus stop? Am I standing in the grass? Am I standing on cement? If it's rainy, the grass is wet. Is the bus driver going to see me? He's sure not going to see me if I'm not right by the curb. I know that for a fact. I've ridden the bus for more than 20 years. So that is one of my big concerns. And the other big concern is that I am a pedestrian. I don't drive. And I am very concerned about having to walk down that driveway to the street to get to the bus stop and having cars coming and wanting to turn left across where I'm walking. If cars were coming out this way, then they're looking both ways, and then they can see that I'm there. But if they're trying to turn left, and if there's any traffic at all, I've been in that situation before with left-hand turns on regular streets. People aren't looking. People don't want to look. What they want to do is make their turn. So that's a concern of mine, that and all the pedestrians we have, from children walking home from the grade school and walking to school. There are a lot of children walking along that area. So those are my main concerns. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And who are you conceding your time to? So she has another 45 seconds. Get your last thought in. There you go.
Colton again. We do request the denial of all three variances and the entire development. We have a simple observation that one of the gentlemen made, is that this is too big a complex for this small, less than half an acre area. Trying to fit this in and all the people, it won't be one person per complex. It will probably be 2 or 3. And those parking spaces that you see far from the building, those will be 2 feet from the line because there won't be any setback. There may be setback, as they're talking about, between the building and that far parking, but that far parking will be right next to us. So I will leave that there.
All right.
And I'll
All right. Raina Hedema? Hedema. All right.
I'm Raina Hatema, and I live in Stewart Terrace apartment, number 17. And I will go through this. These are bullet points of Pam, so whatever she didn't get, they're here. Pam gave you details on our concerns about the construction. Am I in front of? Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay. On the construction on 21742 Southwest Sherwood Boulevard, I will give you the bullet points of the summary. There's heavy traffic, especially during the school year. Parents are driving elementary school children to and from school. There are 4 apartment complexes nobody mentioned. I don't think apartment complexes are one-family units, are they? Hey, I'm not educated in America, but I think that's not so. Anyway, according to the single-family apartments, single family, there's how many people live in those apartments? There's 4 apartment complexes on this street within a couple of blocks. And that's where the kids go back and forth. And anyway, Stewart Terrace does not have enough about parking. Where are the construction vehicles going to park? On Century Drive? Stewart Terrace does not have enough parking as it is. Stewart Terrace driveway has to be open at all times for tenants, ambulance, and fire trucks for 911 calls. They happen all the time. For garbage and recycle trucks once a week. On water and sewage, Stewart Terrace has had sewage problems this last year. Do they know about that? Then we have about the bus. There's one bus, 94, going from our apartment to Tigard. And I called TroyMed and I said, can we have more buses? And they said, we do not have operators. Sorry, we have buses, but we don't have operators. So that's a no-no. Then we want an 8 feet high wide vinyl fence. 10 feet from parking and alleyway of the new townhouses. And then I agree, have the new townhouse entrance on the left-hand side when you're facing the townhouses. The entrance going to the alleyway and then come out Stewart Terrace's driveway. And that's it. I think I did it all. I have 46 minutes.
Thank you. Bonnie Harris.
Bonnie Harris, also at Stewart Terrace in apartment 2. I wanted to thank the applicant for agreeing to the solid vinyl fence. That's great. But at 6 feet, it's not going to be. If they could put the hedge behind it, I assume they were talking about Sweet Bay because they said an evergreen, and those can grow to 10 or 12 feet. You can maintain them there. That would be a world of difference. And she did mention the trees that are on our side of the fence as, no, they don't provide any blocking. There's a half-dead big leaf maple that's going to have to come down. A couple of spruces that are leaning over our building that we hope they'll get rid of. And a couple of others that are past their prime. So they're not, those are trees that are not going to be lasting very long. The fence is an important thing because it will block light, sound, fumes, everything. And the hedge would give, it would be almost blocking the whole sound thing. And what was that other thing? Oh, the driveway. If they came out the same way we came out, at least we'd all be going in the same direction. And the worst we could do is take somebody's paint off. I don't know, they're from the schematics that we can see, there's no reason they can't come in the south drive and then come out. Because like everybody here, I've been a teenager, and if they're gonna come in our drive and take a left turn to go into theirs, they're gonna cut that corner right off. They're gonna be coming fast. You know, there's gonna be kids there. So I did a video of, but I couldn't bring it. I just stood at our driveway for 5 minutes. I timed it, and I didn't count the cars, but I would guess 35 cars passed in that 5 minutes, and some pedestrians. And that was just a random time of day. There's already a lot of traffic on Sherwood Boulevard, and people will get backed up in the street on the boulevard if they're trying to turn in right or left. And then we will have less vision to the left. And who knows how long that line will be. It's going to back up traffic on the boulevard. That's going to be almost as many people as we have at Stewart Terrace. So it's doubling that driveway's capacity, and it's not really up for it. That's all I've got.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Neil Shannon.
My name is Neil Shannon, and I reside at 23997 Southwest Red Fern Drive. Many ordinary citizens of Sherwood have appeared before the board in opposition to this proposal because of the many issues, including disruption of existing driveways, traffic, pedestrian access, and the loss of significant natural features, to wit, the large Douglas fir and Freeman maple at the south end of the project site. I join in opposition to the loss of the trees at the south end of the site. I understand why the developer wants to cut them down. He's trying to maximize the space on an area that is practically unbuildable. The tree report prepared by the applicant identifies these trees as greater than 30 inches in diameter. That's a tree greater than 2.5 feet in diameter. If you were to stand next to it, there would be no chance for you to wrap your arms around that tree. And even two would stretch to touch their fingers. Using the standard estimates, we find that these trees are well over 100 years. They were standing at the entrance to Sherwood even before we were known as Sherwood. They survived the Great Fire of 1895 and again survived the fire in 1911. They have majestically guarded the western entrance to Sherwood throughout all of our history. They deserve a better fate than to fall to the idea of paved paradise and put up a parking lot, or excuse me, yeah. Anyway, as a member of the Planning Commission and as citizens of Sherwood, their fate rests in your hands. It is my belief that you have the authority to apply the statutes of the City Code 16-142-070, Section D, Item 4, Subsection E, and determine that these trees, quote, otherwise merit retention because of unusual size of tree, stand, or historic association. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. So that is all of the blue cards that I have. Is there anybody else that would like to testify in favor of this application? Anybody else that would like to testify in a... Yep, 40 seconds left. You need to come up and use the microphone, please. We'll let you have your 40 seconds left.
People at Stewart Terrace don't want to have the driveway called Glen Eagle Street or Drive or whatever, Glen Eagle. It is the driveway of Stewart Terrace, and it's not a street and it's not a driveway. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Back to my script. Does anybody wish to provide, did I ask for against application? Does anyone wish to provide neutral testimony? Then at this time I would ask if the applicant wishes to provide rebuttal testimony.
Just a couple of points, I guess. I know that there's a lot of people that really would like to see the access changed to the north driveway. And I think that, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but typically if you were northbound on Sherwood, you would make that right turn and then you'd enter our development and then you'd leave. And you could either turn left or right. Currently, that's the anticipated plan. But if we reverse that, then people leaving the development to turn right, there would be conflicts with people slowing down to turn into our development. If the driveway was on the north end and the exit was on the south, then if you were northbound, you'd be slowing down. But anybody leaving the southern driveway, then if they're turning right, they're going to be accelerating into slowing traffic. And then it also sounds like the bus stops in front of the development site as well, so that you have an additional obstacle that we didn't even really anticipate when we showed the driveway on the south side. But historically, I think when I've seen developments that have an entrance drive and an exit drive and they're separate, historically the entrance would be on the first driveway in the route of travel, and the exit would be the second driveway. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer. That's historically what I've seen. I don't know what to say about the pedestrian safety. I'm not really sure why the residents of Stewart Terrace are using the driveway and why there's not a sidewalk on their development site that would allow them to get to the pedestrian way. I guess we would need to ask what the city wants to do as it relates to the bus stop and the relocated sidewalk.
I can address that during the staff comments.
Okay, great. And then Mr. Kennedy made a comment about the garages. We don't have garages. Those are actually not allowed for this type of a development. It's tuck under, similar to a carport that's not secure though. So it's unlikely that anybody would store anything there that wasn't a car or the trash receptacles that are going to be there. I think that's what I have. I think that our proposal is a solid proposal and it meets the intent of the code. Spencer?
We are aware that this is a change and it's difficult to have change, and when it's so close to your site and you guys do have a lovely community, it seems like that you have a good group of friends. We're hoping to add to the community, and the whole thing about density in Oregon has actually been passed in the 70s so that we can have farmland and keep our forests. So density in cities is to preserve what is wonderful about Oregon. So thank you.
I also wanted to say that that we don't have any concerns with the conditions that were part of the staff report.
All right. Any other questions of the applicant before they?
I have one. Do you have a rebuttal concerning the trees they're concerned about?
So, as I said, the trees that are on site are there's really no way to save the trees or preserve the trees that are on site, and I know there's a tender spot for a lot of people for that Freeman maple that's at the southwest corner of the development site. Currently, I think it is maybe on the property line or just inside of it, and when the right-of-way is dedicated, then it would be 100% on the city's property, and I guess it's really their decision, but it's not a tree. I know that there are people that like it, but it's not a tree that's been maintained. It's in the way of the power lines, and I don't know how it could be preserved, whether with this development or if there was anything to happen in the future. I don't know that it's a tree that the city desires to save even.
Right.
Can you speak to the fence a little bit more, the design of it, how high, please?
We're only allowed to have a 6-foot fence, so we've agreed to a 6-foot fence. I suppose if the code would allow an 8-foot fence, the height of it is I don't think we have any issues with it being taller. I just know that the code only allows a 6-foot fence.
Is there vegetation or something you're installing there too?
There's a hedge that'll be adjacent to it as well, an evergreen hedge, so it'll be green all year. And then there are also some additional trees that'll be planted. They're little landscape beds adjacent to each of the driveways into the carports, and most of those have trees. They don't all have trees, but most of them have trees. So there'll be some additional screening as the canopy of those trees expands as they grow and they mature.
On the back of the building?
On the back side, yeah. There's trees all around the proposed trees all around the building.
So between the building and the drive aisle, is it?
Between the building and the drive aisle, there are landscape beds adjacent to the parking under the building, and most of those will have trees as well as shrubs.
Okay, thank you.
They don't all, but there are several that do.
Commissioner Montalvo?
I just had a couple questions. Regardless of the traffic flow, it looks like it's a 20-foot wide driveway that you're proposing on Sherwood Boulevard. Clearly, that's big enough to accommodate two-way traffic. How are you proposing? Was it just signage to limit it as egress only, or how are you going to control that?
It will be signed, egress only. Okay. And the driveway on our site is one-way only. So once you make that left turn from the shared driveway, it's all one-way traffic.
Right. Although it might not look that way for folks traveling if it's wide enough. You know, typically a one-way circulation point's narrower. You know, it kind of helps visual cue travelers.
Yeah, it will be signed, and we'd probably have a sign that said, this is an exit, you know, one-way traffic, or don't enter. I can't remember what the sign was specifically.
Chris Fogerson with the LEI Engineering and Surveying of Oregon, and with regard to the width of the drive on the north that you're speaking of, as a function of fire access, and since it is a fire lane, minimum width is 20 feet, and through the site, arrows painted on the ground, signage on the entrances and exits directing traffic. And with regard to the driveway in, the easement, when it was dedicated, very explicitly stated there should be parking. There's currently parking on the incoming drive aisle into Stewart Terrace that is shared by both properties. In the proposed condition, it would actually improve because it's now going to be used, no parking on the driveway coming in. Just as a point of note.
So one more question since you're on the driveway. Is there any restriction from, because it is a fire access, to put a speed hump for the left turn? The testimony was of concern, people taking that corner fast. If you were to put a drive hump over that to get into your one-way driveway, is that allowed on that fire access road?
So currently the site grading is such that when you come in the drive aisle to Stewart Terrace and make the turn in, there's a grade change to come in. And that was kind of a function of, you know, big block of building all same height. And there's a general upward sort of grade along Sherwood Boulevard and on the site. And so by the time you get the building constructed towards the end and the drive aisle coming in, there's actually about a 6% grade. So it's not going to be high rate of speed at all.
Are you wondering, though, if one could be in that shared drive space?
Not in the shared drive, but the left turn, so people.
I don't think it would be practical.
Okay.
Just because of the grade change and, you know.
I was just trying to address the concern if.
I don't believe we would be allowed to design that due to grade constraints.
Okay.
Because the driveway design is already at 6 to 8%. And then if we added a speed hump, we'd be looking at a grade difference that wouldn't allow passenger vehicle through.
Okay, perfect. I was just thinking outside the box there. All right,
Nobody
thank
would
you.
be able to park on site.
Okay. All right. Sorry, we got you all involved. So before we close the testimony, I guess I need to ask about the conversation and the questions that we had asked about the condition related to considering the variance and the pedestrian scale aspect of that.
So if we need to get to a, continue, if the Planning Commission would like to have that addressed, not through a condition, then we'd probably want to know that before you guys before you close the record and deliberate. We probably want to, get a sense of that and then sort of set up the timeline for the revision and coming back.
That's what I was hoping you'd make me sound a lot smarter if I threw it out there and then.
Well, and we want to know if there's anything else you'd like the applicant to evaluate during this continuance period so that they are able to come back with a proposal that responds to your concerns.
Okay, so if I were to restate this, the commission has at least a couple of commissioners has expressed a concern about variance acceptance in consideration to the pedestrian scale on the front of the building and on the two ends, the east and west ends. And before considering and voting on that, we would like the applicant the opportunity to present something back to us that would be more in line with a pedestrian scale variance on a setback. Any other concerns it would be appropriate if before we send the applicant back, if we're doing.
Could we direct the applicant as an example to look at or model it after the residential design criteria, like just to give them some type of guideline?
So are you talking about a condition of approval or a direction for them to revise and then come back for approval at Planning Commission? Are you talking? So there's two options. You can, I think you could, if it's very clear what the requirement is of the condition. You could do that if it's clear. I don't know if the applicant has any ideas that we could agree to now, say belly band between the first and second floor, minimum width of this. That's getting us to something very clear that then staff can just check, you did it. If we don't have any ideas of exactly how to get there and the Planning Commission wants that change, then we probably should continue, as Carrie has mentioned, and continue, get the revision in. You guys actually review that elevation, approve it, and then that gets constructed. So it's whether or not, I guess, we can get to a clear condition that everyone's happy with. But there's a little bit of concern. We don't want something vague that then staff and the applicant are not in alignment with, and then you guys aren't happy with. I think if it's a clear condition, prescriptive, we can get there with a condition. If not, then we want to probably continue 2 weeks, have them revise the elevation, and come back to you for that approval.
And if we're going to do that, then we need to put on the table any other issues. And that doesn't mean that we're voting for approval or denying. We could come back as a commission and say, no, a variance is not warranted based on the findings that the commission makes, or we're in agreements with the staff and we can. I mean, we're still in deliberation, we're still gathering evidence, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can, yeah.
Well, and I'd like the public to have an opportunity to comment on what the applicant proposes. If you all just come up with a condition based on the middle housing standards, then the public hasn't had an opportunity to
Absolutely.
put any input about that. So, and you know, if you continue and you leave the record open for 2 weeks, the applicant might decide that they want to do something else with respect to plantings or something just based on the testimony that was received. Or the neighbors might want to testify that the vinyl fence is okay. I mean, there's a lot of there's some more opportunity for some more dialogue if you go that way rather than drafting a condition.
Right, and I'm in agreement with that. So I'm just saying that as a commission, if we have other concerns, let's get them on the table so that we when we come back in 2 weeks, there's not going to be a smoking gun that comes up in 2 weeks from now that says, oh, by the way, you know, we felt you should have done X, Y, or Z, and we don't want to spring that on you in 2 weeks. So
I have one. I wonder if it's possible that the applicant can do a variance for a 8-foot fence in our code. I mean, is that something that would be possible or a condition? Because that might be something that can satisfy multiple parties. I know it's a hot topic too.
I think staff, we can look at that and see if they're able to address that either through an adjustment.
They would need to
would need to apply.
They need to apply. So there's a process, right? So 6 feet to 8 feet, over 20% Class A. So that Class A variance public hearing for that.
But they're already in a Class A variance.
Yeah, they would need to reapply for this specific Class A variance to the fence. So we would need to do public notice and come back for approval of that 8-foot fence with you. So probably a month and a half to make that happen.
In regard to that code, what's the general thinking for the limit up to a 6-foot fence? Is it to prevent there essentially being an 8-foot wall?
I think it's structural related.
Okay.
It's associated with wind loading on a fence, so you get certain height, distributed load on the side of the fence. So it's usually a function of the structural part of the fence.
Okay.
It's been my personal experience that normally fences are governed too, because most fences are not, you can't see through them, and it carries a lot more ability to stop the wind or additional wind loading, where 6-foot fence with some sort of an additional facade, whether it was a lattice, or and I'm not terribly particular with Sherwood City Code, but I have seen other codes that allowed the 6-foot fencing with some sort of additional facade.
And our code does not allow that. It's a maximum of 6 feet, and that includes any lattice or decorative work.
So it would still need to go through the same process.
And it treats a hedge like a fence. Does it not?
Hedges can be taller than 6 feet.
Yeah. So the main reason is, so the code is that's coming from the residential zone, basically any residential zone. I think maybe the issue is it doesn't differentiate between single family and multifamily, but I think most people would agree we don't want an 8-foot tall fence between two single family residences. It's just kind of too tall, too compoundish for single family, but then it doesn't differentiate for multifamily. So I think that's the problem.
It makes me think of and this might be an exaggeration, but the giant screening wall along Springbrook Drive in Newburgh that is built right up to the sidewalk. It's just, I know this wouldn't be to that degree, but when we drive through that, I look at that and I'm just like, who would want to live or walk next to that?
This would be behind the property.
It would be different.
For the benefit of the people that are on the other side of the property.
But I'm wondering if the hedge doesn't or won't get to that result and still meet within or fall within our code.
Probably fall into deliberations, we should probably stop for now.
So am I missing anything for, we will need a motion to do it a continuance.
regarding the front and side massing of the structure, if we're not comfortable crafting a condition of approval, a specific condition of approval, is it, since there's multiple avenues to address the issue, could we request of the applicant to provide just a handful of options?
Revised plans.
Yeah, if that's, would that be agreeable?
So just a few, some options in terms of how we would treat that.
Yeah,
Sure.
you know, because there are, you know, because it could be done with masonry or different siding or belly band or a combination
Sure.
of all that. I think that would give
Yeah, we
us
can do that.
the best option to then be able to move forward versus something else. So, thank you.
Just want to re-ask kind of one more time, with this, the variance that you're saying if you tried to reduce them in size, you still wouldn't be able to beat that variance. In terms of this lot, the 9 feet versus 14 feet. I think the problem here is we have HDR on a very small lot. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is there any way you could comply with HDR number of units without having this variance? I think that's, I mean, have you looked at all options, how we could frame out this site to comply with the sizing code, you know, with the size of lot that it is being HDR and still hit the number of units minimum required? And I think that's what the issue here is. It's a smaller lot of HDR.
I think it'd be really difficult to get a building that could provide the 20-foot access on the back side of it, accommodate the 14-foot building setback, and then the additional foot for the 15-foot landscape corridor, and then have a unit that would function well. I mean, the functionality within the building would be difficult also because you're compressing it. You're compressing those living spaces too. So if on the second floor where the living, dining, and kitchen are, those spaces become smaller too. So it would be difficult to come up with a unit. And I suppose nothing's impossible, but I'm not sure. I'm not really sure how well they would function, honestly. I mean, we've really worked hard to come up with a unit plan that functions well and that works on the site. And again, we're not. I know it feels like we're maxing the density out, but we're not. And I think that's if a single family home could have gone on this lot, or even two, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. That property would have been developed already.
Right, but we can
that's the challenge.
I guess from perspective, my perspective is you could do 7 units and make 7 units wider.
Has to do with the stairs to get up to those other floors. If we reduce that, we wouldn't be able to get up to those other floors.
So the issue, it sounds like, is really you're going to have a variance if you're going to comply with HDR. Otherwise, you don't build. That's pretty much what it sounds like, because the lot's just too small for HDR without a variance. Is that?
Yeah, it's an undevelopable site otherwise, yeah.
So by saying no, we say that's just going to be vacant forever.
Perhaps you could ask, if you're going to go in this continuance direction, for the applicant to provide you some exhibits that showed you 7 units, to show you how the stairs work, or how
that might be helpful.
The rooms are too narrow or something, so that you could actually see it in the sort of analysis of, you know, whether or not 7 units would give you a need for a variance or not, right? Because that's the minimum you can build, is
Right.
7.
Okay.
Without like a zone change request or something.
Right. And so
Yeah.
Keep in mind too, you know, if you're looking at that top-down plan of this, the portion that shows the parking spot is, you know, if you reduce that anymore, you're reducing the whole footprint of the, you know, so you're essentially, you're already having a building width depth that's roughly 1.5 parking spaces deep. So trying to reduce it for, you know, trying to build a home on a parking spot's depth. Myself personally, I don't know that they have the wiggle room, given that 12 to 1,300 square feet is already a pretty minimal size. So.
And the point of high density is that we want density there. And the city does, in theory. That's the whole point of the zoning, right?
Jeez. Do you mind if I provide a few comments? Some, is that appropriate?
And
Chair
since we're
Simpson?
no, please, and we'll be continuing. I just want to make sure that we get all the facts and concerns out. But thank you.
Yeah, so just a few, I guess just picking up on that final thread, or on that thread, I think it would be difficult in sort of this over general layout to get away from variances. You know, what I don't know is if we were to look at a complete, you know, totally wipe the board and say, all right, we're putting maybe now a square building on the side and the parking on the other side, then maybe that building could fit on the lot and meet the front and rear setback, and then the parking is on the side. What I don't know is how you can meet all of the other standards on that other side. Open space, parking, fire access if that's required based on the design. So under this general layout of linear building close to the street, I think you're going to need variances. What we don't know, what we really haven't seen is a complete redraw and whether or not variances would be needed under that. But, you know, I just in, you know, trusting sort of the applicant's process of how do we best design the site, you know, that's where staff's kind of, you know, looking at them to sort of start that. But staff doesn't really do that. It's kind of up to them. But I think to get away from variances, what I would need to see is totally wipe the board and say, you know, can you design this site to have an 80-foot depth, meet a 20-foot rear, 15-foot front, and somehow get everything else to the side. I think that's how it would have to work in my mind. So this approach of linear building on the front, just based on the depth, we're going to have to get variances. So to get away from variances, I think we'd be looking at a whole redraw. I don't think there's enough depth to get away from variances under this design.
What is, now that's only variance as long as the street gets expanded, right? I mean, in theory.
No, there's the back.
No, I mean the front variance is what I'm thinking of.
The front variance, but the back variance, they only have 2 feet to the back, but the question is the 8-foot wide parking strip, they're creating a buffer between the building, a driveway, a parking row, and then a hedge and a fence between the 3-story residential to, so they don't have a backyard, they have a parking strip. Instead of a 20-foot backyard, they have a,
which I actually think makes good use of a very difficult lot. And, you know, myself personally, if it were a matter of granting variances versus having a singular linear building with no articulation, I appreciate the articulation and the effort that went into you know, creating something feasible for a difficult property. So,
what would the trigger be for the city to actually widen that road?
It would have to be on a capital project. We have our Craig Christensen is also here as engineer with the city of Sherwood. He might be able to answer that, but it likely need to be a capital project. There's so many properties along Sherwood Boulevard that you know, the development over time.
There'd have to be more development going on. I mean, part of me's thinking by the time that it is that 9 feet, that actually matters when we build it. The rest of the area is going to be developed out kind of similar, presumably.
Yeah. Or not, because everywhere is already pretty developed. Like, this is one of the only.
Right, but the
undeveloped.
HDR or the MDRH on the other side,
Yeah.
redevelopment.
Yeah.
So, just a few other really quick clarifications because we still have people in the audience, and I just want to respond to a few of the things. And I apologize I didn't get all of this information to you prior, just really busy. But I think it may help. I just want to get it on the record during this first meeting, and then maybe we can figure out how to proceed. The first is that the applicant is conditioned to provide a new bus stop in front of the site, and so that includes a landing pad, so a concrete pad, so that'd be in the grass in the right of way. So we understand there's a bus stop there. They are conditioned to basically bring that up to full standards for a public, transit stop. We did route this to TriMet. Didn't get a response. I followed up twice. I was disappointed I didn't get a response from them, but our code has standards for properties adjacent to a transit stop, and it basically says provide a landing that's ADA accessible, so they've been conditioned to provide that. So they'll do a new sign and an ADA landing in the right.
Along the current street, I'm guessing, where it is now. What happens when the street's expanded? Where does it go?
We would address it through that improvement project, but it would be replaced.
It might move or
It would be
something.
replaced again at that time. Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, no, because they're billing it. Yeah, it would be replaced at that time, but in the interim, they'd be conditioned to put one in, or if we can get it in place, have final configuration through the design, we would do that.
Now, and this is it a full stop with a bench and a light, or a light, or?
Mainly access in terms of just being able to get there, and then lighting as well is what the code requires. It does not require, this is why I kind of wanted comments from TriMet to see if they had other standards they wanted to apply, but they didn't comment. So we're just going off our code that requires just basically access so you can get to the stop, basically, to walk over the grass like the concern was stated. So that's a condition. I wanted to clarify that now. Fence height 6 feet. Unfortunately, it'd be kind of a lot to go through a variance to get this fence height up. So the maximum fence height is 6 feet. And then the last one is just around the tree. I took a close look at the location of the tree in relation to the right-of-way dedication, and actually assuming the survey is correct, the tree is actually going to be on private property even after the right-of-way dedication from the plans. So it's not going to be in the right of way. So, the comment about potentially the city, owning it and preserving it, it's going to be on private property, assuming the survey is correct, and we assume it is. And so the code basically says if you have a need for the development for really anything, parking, building, etc., then the trees can be removed. So there is the standard that Mr. Shannon mentioned, but as the staff on this, I haven't seen a really strong argument for utilizing that code section for these trees. That's the staff opinion on it. So just wanted to get all that out on the record.
Well, if we continue it, maybe you can take a look at that and write on that as well. Review that code too.
Yeah, we can give you some findings on that, yeah.
Yep.
So that's my comments. And then just to get us sort of over this hump, it sounds like we're looking at a continuance unless you guys are ready to make a motion. So I think the things on the table would be to have did I hear that we wanted options for the facade? Do you want them to do different sort of designs to bring back to you?
Since there's multiple ways to address the issue,
Yeah.
I feel that's the best path forward.
Okay. So a few things then that I would just recommend just to sort of help us address the concerns and get back to another hearing where you guys can make a really solid decision. We would ask the applicant to look at sort of enhancing the first floor or anything, basically below the second floor to enhance the pedestrian experience and provide additional articulation or visual appeal from the road. That would be one. I think we could add, I was just looking at the site plan related to the issue about the drive aisle and that circulation. Part of the issue is that the there's no sidewalk on the side that this project is going to be on. There's a sidewalk on the other side of the driveway, it'd be the south side. So the Stewart Terrace residents would need to use that existing sidewalk on the south side of their property to get to the street. So I think that's an option. So I think that alleviates the concern about people on the other side, because they do have a sidewalk on the other side. However, the driveway, I'm just kind of really just saying things might be possible. I think the driveway width is at 30 feet right now. I'm just wondering if I don't think it's possible, but I'm wondering if we can just answer if it's possible to fit a sidewalk on the north side of the driveway. The issue is that eventually we're going to get off this property and onto the actual Stewart Terrace property, and I don't think there's a sidewalk there. So even if this applicant was willing to provide another sidewalk on the north side, it would eventually run into just the parking lot of the Stewart Terrace. And so I might be worth looking at that to just say for sure either no, there's not enough space, doesn't work, but that at least addresses the concern and says, all right, you need to rely on the south parking lot.
You're saying that the existing driveway into Stewart Terrace has a sidewalk on the south side.
Correct.
Of it.
Yes.
In my mind, that's the best spot for a sidewalk to be in this configuration, because it's then not crossing where new development residents
Right.
will have to make a left into it.
Right.
Any further sidewalk on that side, for the new development, they'll have personal walks out to the road.
Right. So yeah, so that sidewalk is existing, and my recommendation would just be, can we answer the question of, is it possible? I don't think it is. I've kind of looked at it, and it's not a great fit. But I know that there might be a little bit extra width in that driveway. I think it's 30 feet, and our standard's 24. And if they own the property, maybe they could put in a 5-foot sidewalk. My question is, where does it go? It's going to maybe be a sidewalk to nowhere, or create other complications for sort of misleading people into that direction. But there is a sidewalk on the other side. And then my only last comment around maybe addressing the neighbor concerns would be potentially, we have code around the size of the plantings when they go in. And so just thinking about that rear area where they've agreed to a 6-foot tall fence, potentially we could condition them. It'd be a simple one to install mature landscaping. I mean, you can go get a 6-foot tall, whatever, and install that basically install it at maturity. So in 2 years, you're at 8 feet tall. Or if they want to change the species to go a little bit taller and then plant it at maturity, so you get up to that, screening much faster than, say, whatever the standard is, a 3-gallon pot, of what it says now. So you could probably it might require a change to the species there, but if we can get an evergreen species planted at maturity, that's in addition to the 6-foot tall vinyl fence. I think that gets us the buffer much faster.
So for the rear yard variance, the accommodation that we would be accepting is that they're doing a 6-foot tall fence, and they're planting mature to help buffer the difference between not having the 10-foot.
Correct. It just gets them there faster. And I just say, those are my ideas to sort of address the concerns and come back to you guys, with a solid decision. Are there other concerns you guys want the applicant to look at?
So, commissioners, are you interested in getting revised plans, or just sketch drawings with options of materials? Because I don't want to pick an option. I'd rather them come in with their. I mean, we're not.
Proposal.
Yeah. Are you wanting a couple of different renderings? Because I'm looking at Carrie, because I'm waiting for her to tell me it's right or wrong. But I don't think it's our job to pick which frontage.
Yeah.
Maybe just two options? Two?
2 to 3. What
2 to 3.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I think for the other shift, just to clarify, it's not we're not requiring you to do it at this time. But if you guys want to look into all of those things and then say, oh yeah, this species works, or no, nothing at 6 foot is available, we'd be looking for your input on sort of those ideas.
How difficult would it be to get an estimate of actual traffic patterns, just to alleviate a lot of the concern there of people turning in, cutting in all the time? Like how many people would go in and out? I mean,
It's 9 apartments, so there's.
If I can just provide some background,
Yeah,
we have our engineer here as well. So the code requires a TIA for, there's a certain threshold this is far below the threshold. And
All right.
so it's just, you just assume that, you know, as long as we get the flow right and the signage and they meet all the key is they're going to go through an engineering design review and they're going to meet all of our engineering standards. So, you know, that's kind of where the safety aspect comes in.
And then can we also address, and just so for the public to understand that, first off, we're all volunteers, so we do this just because we like to carry around large boxes of paper. And but some of the things that we're operating with are, you know, they're outside. I know the gentleman that was here from the council that was from 1995 or other things. Things have changed a lot recently, and a lot of it has to do with state rules or metro, and even in the future, other things are going to be changing. I know that it's hard to hear that we're only going to have 18 parking spaces for 9 units, but the state's looking at regulations to only 1 per unit, or not allowing us to require any parking. So the state legislature has put into place some things that are making home rule more difficult in our own community. So I'm just saying that, you know,
Elections matter.
Elections matter, and what we here are tasked with is looking at the code in front of us and applying it in a manner that is, you know, based on what is allowed in the code at the time that they submitted their application. So we're doing the best we can with what we have. So thank you, and thank you for your testifying, because it did make a difference. We have a fence coming in. We've got an applicant that's trying to work with the community. So appreciate that, and I think we'll. So we can't have people coming from outside the audience while we're doing this, but that's okay, but we are going to continue the hearing based on what I've heard before. So there'll be an opportunity for the applicant to provide additional information and an opportunity for you as citizens to provide additional information and to testify again. So that this continuance will allow, if we vote for a continuance, you'll have an opportunity to submit more information between now and then.
The only other thing that kind of came up was feasibility of fewer units in a way that could comply, but that sounds like it'd be a whole lot of redraws of architectural stuff too, and so I don't know. So and you already kind of spoke to that too. Yeah, go ahead.
Impact.
Say what?
As well. There's also the economic impact. You know, everything's got a pencil.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it makes sense for the applicant to be able to respond to the planning commission, and then we don't let the public do the same. So I'd appreciate it if you'd.
I misspoke. I thought it was an open discussion. Apologies.
Okay.
But what I was saying is, Eric already kind of spoke to that feasibility a bit as well as a city rep and not a representative of the applicant. So I don't know that we need to make them, unless you guys want to see a whole bunch of.
I'm sufficient with what's been shown.
I'm just trying to think of like, what are we going to direct the applicant to have to do? Come back. So.
Okay.
Not that, but I have. What are the things we have on our list here? I've got. Eric's going to look at the tree code we talked about. Speak to that a little bit. Look at sidewalk. Right. The fence vegetation, and the facade stuff. Right.
And
those are the
anything
4
else,
things that I have.
And anything else you guys want, but those are my 4. Yep.
Okay.
On the facade, please remember the side facades as well. Thank you.
I'm ready for a motion.
I am. I move the Sherwood Planning. Oh, one last question, Eric. This would be continued to July 26th.
Correct. And just quick note on schedule, continue to July 26th, and your decision is required on August 9. So the first meeting in August. So you have 2 more cracks at this.
So we don't need the applicant to extend the 120-day deadline.
We don't at this point. No. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Is it okay if I ask the applicant if they're comfortable with July 26th?
Okay.
Yes.
So
We should be able to provide you with some options and
Okay.
look at those other things
Okay, thank you.
by the 26th. Thank you.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission continue the public hearing on the application for case file LU 2022-006 SPVAR Sherwood Boulevard multifamily until July 26th, 2022.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we continue LU 2022-006 to July 26th. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will be taking a break before the next hearing.
Okay. I'm pinch hitting. Yes.
At least he gets paid.
As I say.
Look at he bailed on you.
I know.
You sat there and listened to him all night, and then he leaves.
See how you are?
We're busy, Neil, for sure.
All right. Let me pretend like I know what I'm doing. If we hurry, we lost the attorney, so I might get away with doing something wrong. I am. Probably get in trouble later. All right. We are back from recess. The public hearing on Sherwood Festival Plaza and parking lot land use case file LU 2022-015 SP-CUP is called to order. I'm now going to turn to staff for the hearing introduction.
Thank you, Chair. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, 15 minutes, questions by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. Applicants, 30 minutes. Persons in favor of the application, 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application, 4 minutes each, and rebuttal from the applicants is the remainder of the 30-minute time. Then no other testimony will be taken from the public or applicant unless the public testimony period is reopened. Then we'll have final comments by staff, and then questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and then deliberation by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Staff will recognize people who have signed up to speak 24 hours in advance to provide testimony virtually. When it is your time to provide testimony, please state your name and address for the record. If you are in the audience this evening and wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit it to planning staff. The chair will recognize people who wish to speak. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record. Any questions should be addressed through the chair. In reaching a decision on the application, the commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. The staff report is available online and at City Hall, and the staff report was accessible to the public 7 days prior to this meeting date. The testimony and evidence must address the criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again, without enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I would like to ask members of the commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing this evening. So with that, I'm going to call Commissioner Waidola.
No, I don't have any ex parte contact, bias, conflict of interest, and plan to participate.
Commissioner Winborn.
No ex parte contact or anything. I do intend to participate.
Commissioner Vance.
No ex parte contact, and I do intend to participate.
Commissioner Kai.
I have none and plan to participate.
Commissioner Lampros.
I have none and plan to participate.
Commissioner Montalvo.
No ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and plan to participate.
And Chair Simpson.
I have no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and plan to participate in this hearing.
So I'll be presenting the staff report this evening. I'm filling in for
Does
senior planner.
any member of the audience?
Oh, thank you. I had lost track of my own script here. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any planning commission's member's ability to participate this evening? So with that, I'll start the staff presentation. 1 second. Oh, great. So good evening, commissioners. This hearing is on proposed Sherwood Festival Plaza and the parking lot site. It's case file LU 2022-015 SPCUP. The applicant this evening is the Urban Renewal Agency in the city of Sherwood. The location of the site is on the southeast corner of the intersection of Southwest 1st and Pine Streets. The Urban Renewal Agency is seeking a site plan approval and a conditional use permit to develop the existing vacant parcel, which was formerly the Robin Hood Theater site, to allow a new public parking lot and a new festival plaza space in that area. The zoning is retail commercial. It's located in the Old Town Smockville Overlay District, and this is a Type 4 land use review through Planning Commission. You are the final decision maker. And all the application materials have been posted on the website, and you can find them at that address below. The application was noticed with all requirements for the development code. It was routed to agencies, public notice was sent out, and to this evening, we haven't received any public comments. This slide shows the applicable chapters of the development code, and all of these chapters are addressed in the staff report this evening. So a little bit about the site and existing conditions. The location, once again, it was on the southwest corner of the intersection of Southwest 1st and Pine Streets. The site is a graveled parking lot that is currently used for parking, and the site is also used for events during the summer months as well. Existing access to the parking lot is from Southwest 1st, which is an arterial status roadway, and a public alley on the south side of the lot. A little bit about the surrounding land uses and zoning. The site is surrounded by properties all zoned with retail commercial zoning in the Old Town Overlay District. East of the site is the American Legion building, and to the west is Clancy's Restaurant. To the north is a parking lot for Symposium Cafe, and to the south are businesses, offices, and restaurants. This slide shows the site plan for the application. The proposal consists of 17 parking stalls meeting the length, width, and depth requirements of the Sherwood Development Code. 15 parking stalls are standard width, 1 stall will be compact, and 1 stall will meet ADA requirements. You can see the access from the Southwest 1st, and also access from the alley to the south of the site there. Other amenities to this site include vegetation and buffering around the parking lot stalls themselves, additional street trees that meet the city's tree canopy approval, and then I'm going to be talking about some other amenities here in a second when we get to the renderings. So as you can see here in some of the renderings that have been provided, the site is buffered with landscaping on the east and west sides of the site. The sidewalk along Pine Street is extended with pavers, and it creates this pathway along a treescaped area. The site incorporates stone benches along the street edge, and it incorporates this into the pedestrian kind of amenity that creates that big buffered sidewalk with the tree canopy along that edge of Pine Street. In addition, the site will be used for public use for festivals such as Robin Hood and Cruisin'. The site will have large metal poles that will be installed that will support canopy structures for weather protection, either from the rain or the sun, Oregon weather. And different materials will be used, and I'll get to those materials here in a couple more slides. But as reflected on this slide, public parking is a permitted use, and the proposed festival plaza is a public use that is permitted conditionally in the RC zone. This is kind of a unique application because the proposal is, we're not proposing to build a structure on the site, but the site lot area does meet the requirements of the retail commercial zone in Old Town. So just a few quick highlights from the site plan review, and these are pretty high level, and they're also addressed in your staff report. So the proposal meets the applicable zoning district standards as discussed in the previous slide. The engineering department has reviewed the proposal for water, sanitary, sewer, and stormwater, and all those utilities are available to the site or can be extended to the site, and so can electrical services for festival uses for vendors as well. The property will remain in the ownership of the city of Sherwood, so there isn't any requirements for covenants, agreements, or any specific documents required for the site. The site is currently vacant. It doesn't have any significant natural resources on the site itself. The Festival Plaza parking, it doesn't generate traffic trips, and a traffic trip count and traffic impact analysis wasn't required per the city engineer. Some highlights from the conditional use review, and these are pretty high level as well, and it goes into much more detail in the staff report. But once again, the proposed lot conforms with the applicable zoning standards of the RC zone. The existing land uses in all directions of the site are retail commercial, so we don't expect any adverse impacts related to noise or public safety. We don't expect any adverse impacts for noise, and don't anticipate any public safety issues as a result of the proposed development. The proposal meets the goals and policies of the comp plan by creating a public open space in downtown Sherwood, and the proposed Festival Plaza will also help preserve the history of the site through a storyboard interpretive sign, and it will be mounted on a stone wall that kind of describes the history of the Robin Hood Theater and the history of the site overall. The proposed event space will house festivals for the festival seasons like we see here in Sherwood, and the surrounding businesses will benefit from that use as well. So that's the conditional use criteria. And then, as I was saying, this is kind of a unique site or a unique proposal because we're not proposing a structure that would have to comply with the Old Town Overlay Design Standards. However, this site is incorporating the color and materials that are found currently in Old Town Sherwood that are kind of that earth tone and reflect the materials used over here in Cannery Square, here at the Civic Building when it comes to the color. The color palette.
It was part of the earth color-wise.
Yeah, but they're blue.
That's good.
So with that, we haven't received any public comment from the writing of the staff report. We haven't received any public comment today, but we will accept public testimony at tonight's hearing if anyone has testimony to provide. I do want to provide a modification to condition B1 in the staff report, and the modification is just to strike that condition, but to add condition A7, which states the applicant shall submit building permits for the pools that will have the canopy sails attached for the engineer design review and approval. And the reason for this modification was because the first condition in B1 said prior to final site plan approval they needed to apply for building permits, and that's not necessarily the process that an applicant goes through. Typically they will go through the when they submit for building permits, they will need to show that those poles are engineered correctly for wind load. That goes with the building permit, not necessarily the final site plan review. So staff recommendation tonight Staff recommends approval of LU 2022-015 SPCUP, subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report with the modification striking condition B1 and adding condition A7 as presented this evening. And as always, Planning Commission has alternatives tonight. You can approve the application with staff's finding and conditions, or you can deny the application with revised findings, or you can always continue the hearing for additional information. And with that, I can take any questions that you may have.
Just a simple question. I don't know if it pertains to what's in front of us here tonight, but will the plaza be available for private use and rental? Like, for example, will Clancy's be able to rent it out for St. Patty's Day and stuff like that?
You know, that is a great question, and I don't know that answer. I definitely do know that the city has different permits for right-of-way usage or special events.
Does that pertain to what's before us tonight, though? No. Okay, thanks.
I just had one super quick one. I saw there was a detailed drawing for bike parking, bike racks. Is there do you have any info as where that's proposed or how many bike parking? It seems like a nice fit, to bring people here to have a place to park their bikes.
Yes, so I want to go back to the site plan really quick. And then we also have the designer online this evening to Kurt Longo, and he will be able to provide additional information. And the site plan that I am showing doesn't exactly show where the bike parking is going to be, although it's definitely required by code. And you can ask that question too from Kurt.
Is there a reason, or I'm guessing, but what's the reason why a restroom like at County Square wasn't incorporated? Primarily a parking lot versus?
It's correct. I mean, primarily the use is for a parking lot where, and you'll see these festival uses probably more during the spring and summer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm guessing one unit wouldn't prevent 20 porta potties needing to be somewhere. And then an additional question, as far as parking enforcement, how is that structured currently, and will there be time limits, or how will that?
I was going to ask if there's parking hours or something, right along those lines. Thank you.
So right now, in downtown along the public streets, there's a 2-hour parking limit. And parking is enforced by the Sherwood Police Department. I don't know if this site is going to have posted parking hours or not.
Well, you have to get cars removed in order to do the festival things, I assume.
Well, I think at minimum we would probably want it to have the same parking time limits as the rest of Old Town. And then some improved mechanism for enforcement.
Within our purview to put a condition on this? Is this within our purview to put a condition, or just make a recommendation to staff to?
I would make a recommendation to staff.
Okay.
And like I said, we have Kurt on the line, who's the designer, and he can speak to he can speak more about this site.
Is it appropriate for me to provide a comment? Can I do that? I'm just thinking about the other, because it's going to be a publicly owned but private lot, right? It's not like right of way. It's a publicly owned parking lot owned by the city. So, for example, this one here, and then we have the one right over here that we recently did. I think those are probably the two, but I don't think either of these have hour restrictions, right? So we're just saying basically it's for City Hall, maybe like a designated use. We have this one for City Hall. That one's also kind of for City Hall, but there's no hour restrictions on the ones that we currently have. That was just my only
Right.
comment.
And does staff park in the one across the street and stay there all day?
Do we park in that one? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If this one's full, we'll park in that one. Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen, and that's the complaint we hear from citizens is that staff's parking. There's no parking in Old Town. So, did you have a question? Okay, so a couple comments. Exhibit B2 it just says it's confusing. It says it's from Scott Mackay, building
inspector.
It says electrical permits from Washington County. Is that a true statement? Because that's not in the conditions.
So it doesn't need to be in the conditions when somebody applies for a electrical permit here in Sherwood. They go through Washington County for that permit.
Okay, and you had already addressed the canopy sales are going to be engineered. I have a question. It looks like we're taking away a couple of spaces because we're putting. Oh, where'd the plan go? Do we have to have the 10-foot buffer to the alley? Because we could put in, each row could have one more compact space if we changed it from parking lot to the alley. A 10-foot buffer seems.
So our code does talk about having that 10-foot buffer between, parking spaces and the property line, and also between parking spaces and public streets. So if you vision the parking lot across the street, that parking lot across the street does have that 10-foot buffer from First Street and the alley behind, and then the two properties that abut that site.
Yeah, I was just, and don't recall that one, but I'm just looking at this thinking, why would we buffer between a parking lot to an alley? I guess if we have to, we have to. Why no garbage cans? Why would we not condition garbage cans someplace?
I am going to let Kurt address the garbage issue.
Or do we have street garbage cans out?
On that similar note, Clancy's has their dumpsters on the sidewalk. Not that this would necessarily be the place to incorporate that, but
They have dumpsters, yeah. Do they always have them? I thought they pull them back.
is that what they do? Or
Anyway, they're not on the sidewalk all the time, are they? No, they've got to be pulling them back and forth, don't they?
they're most of the time, but maybe.
So is there a possibility to have a requirement that we have garbage cans, or are there garbage cans someplace?
You should ask Kurt that question.
1698020, which is on packet page 838. There's no. So. Is Kurt going to chime in, or what I need to do to?
I'm not quite sure at what point you'd like me to chime in, but I can at any time and identify myself as well.
Okay. It's okay. So on staff report, I don't know if you're looking at page 30 of 44, or packet page 838, 1698020 solid waste and recycling storage. It says the preliminary site plans do not show any, and they're not proposed. So per the analysis, the standard is met. But I'm just thinking from common sense, where are garbage cans going to be located for public use?
Sure. Would you like me to answer that question?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, let me identify myself first. This is Kurt Lango with Lango Hansen Landscape Architects, 1100 Northwest Gleason, Portland. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the plaza. Actually, we are the designers of Cannery Square many years ago, so we were excited to be invited back to participate in this process. There's been a couple of good points brought up. I think maybe the bike racks, I'll talk about that briefly first. So that is actually identified as one of the conditions. We were a little bit late in not putting a bike rack in. So a single bike rack will be proposed. It will be near the street frontage. I can also, I don't know if I have the ability to share my screen. If I do, then I can put up a plan to illustrate where we'd want to put that. The trash receptacles, typically those previously were put within the right-of-way. Along this stretch, there are no trash receptacles, so we would be open to that condition if there is a desire to put trash receptacles adjacent to Pine Street.
And Kurt, let me just say, I apologize. First off, I did not realize that you were going to be testifying as the applicant. I misunderstood Erica when she was testifying. I thought she was testifying as the applicant. So
no problem.
You can go ahead and do your full presentation. My apologies.
Well, am I able to share my screen?
I think you are. I think you can, Kurt.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and I understand it's very late, so I'll be ever so brief, and maybe I'll hope to answer some of the questions that you have. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I think the idea for the Festival Plaza was foremost to be able to formalize the festival space, but also be a parking lot for the remainder of the year. In doing so, we wanted to create good hard surface materials, still meet the landscape codes because it will function as a parking lot. So we still felt that particularly along the perimeters, to have some screening, to have some vegetation, as you do with many of your other parking lots nearby. I did want to mention just a couple things. One is the parking lot proper is in this area right in here. However, we do have an open space, a promenade that is anywhere from 10 to 15 feet wide here at the northern part of the project adjacent to Pine Street. So that would allow for some sort of event or festival use to happen and still keeping this parking lot open if you wanted to. Also during events, it allows you to set up different booths or the beer garden that happens here and have other tents within this area as well. In terms of the bike parking spaces, what we were thinking about locating is we have these little kind of interstitial spaces right here that are paved. So we were thinking about putting 2 bike parking spaces here. And then to address the trash receptacle, if that was a desire, we could also put those within that zone as well. I think just kind of going through, I think you have previously seen this plan, the ability to have some larger canopy pieces that will be tied to the poles. Right here, they'll be structured to support those canopies. And then within that smaller promenade, you see the ability to set up tents. There was discussion, and it's part of our application, the importance of recalling the history of the site, the Robin Hood Theater, this position in historic downtown. So although they haven't been designed yet, we will have these interpretive plaques that will be combined with narrative, but also photographs. We'll also have an art fence here at the southern, I guess, southern border of the site, along with evergreen trees. This shows the what it would look like during the festivals, and then this would be adjacent to Pine Street. So if there was a desire to have a trash receptacle in here, bike racks will be along this edge as well. There's plenty of space. Showing the ability to have tents within that zone. And then I just wanted to mention, in terms of the festival use, what you see in red in here, as well as orange, will be outlets that will be used, that can be used during the festivals. Well, these black boxes will have larger power sources. The blue will be water. So there will be ample areas for people to connect to power and water. And as Erica mentioned, this is the palette, which we have taken a lot from Cannery Square, the streetscape that you see in Sherwood. So that's a very brief presentation on our part, so I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, and thank you for providing the questions to the answers. I did not mean to skip the fact that you were an applicant online. I again misunderstood Erica. So at this time, I'll ask Erica if we have any members of the audience that have chimed in to testify remotely.
We do not have any applicants who
We
don't have any members of the public who are testifying remotely this evening, but we do have one audience member who submitted a blue card.
Yep, so I'm going to call Mr. Neil Shannon for his testimony at this time.
I'll make it very, very quick. I've had an opportunity to attend the open houses and even attended the work session at City Council. I like the design. I think it's excellent. It'll be a wonderful addition for downtown Sherwood. And if you need to visit the site, come down this Saturday. You can treat yourself to a beer or a wine.
Excellent. I like that plug for the...
Neil Shannon, 23997 Southwest Redfern Drive, Sherwood, Oregon.
All righty. Thank you. All right. So that's we have no other members of the audience even available, and the applicant has the opportunity to rebut the or provide any other comments. Any questions? Yes.
I did just want to say something that's slightly off topic, but I just wanted to thank both Erica and Joy for helping us navigate through this process. It's certainly not the typical type of project that I think you see or they deal with. So I just wanted to say they've been extremely helpful.
Excellent, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Metz.
I guess just a comment about the bike racks, or where we put them, the bike parking. You know, if it is going to be used as a festival, I think it'd be cognizant of, okay, when it's not being used as a festival, where would bikes go? When it is, you don't want them like right in the middle or blocking a place where somebody's going to walk through. There's going to be a tent over or something. So just a thought there, because I mean, it's not in the plan, and the condition of approval is that it appears on a plan, but that means we're not going to see it again. It's just going to be conditioned as approval. So it seems somebody's going to look at it and kind of be cognizant of that. I think it's okay with me. It's not okay with other commissioners. Just something to think about, be cognizant of.
To add a little bit to that, though, is, you know, when I'd come down for festivals and things like that, I'll be on a bike, so I'd still need bike parking for those events.
You still want it in the middle,
right?
Where we can be.
It'd be nice to have, I was looking at it, it'd be nice to have more than just 2 spaces. So as the if the uses get, if they get used, since it is city owned and we are, you know, taxpayers of the city, it'd be nice to make sure.
And there is bike parking right out here too, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Can it be incorporated in that 10 feet of space next to the alley?
Or don't we have a design thing that's smaller with bike rack that we use, could be used?
Oh, there is.
That are proposed in the driveways, or are those not?
You mean the bollards that have the little handles on there so you can put your chains on there? I didn't see that in the street furniture, yeah.
I just wanted, but I'm assuming these are removable bollards, so maybe that's an issue. That would be a nice way to capitalize this.
During the, during festivals and stuff.
Too much way.
Yeah, I think that it's a good use during festivals, no, but I think when it's just not a festival, those could be removed.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but it does seem like there could be an opportunity to provide more than just.
All right.
And then I was wondering on the stone walls or curbs, is there going to be the things to incorporate preventing people or kids from being able to skateboard or do tricks on those different things?
Yes, we'll be using a local basalt for the stone walls. The stone from the Sherwood cannery that we used years ago is no longer available, so we're using a local basalt. By its nature, it will be slightly rougher, but we will be putting in skate stops every so often in order to prevent skateboarders from using the walls.
Okay, thanks.
And then I know the old Robin Hood Theater sign's being removed. Is there an informational marquee or something else that's going to be going back up? Because it is kind of nice to have.
Should it not be removed?
Well, that was really discussed at length. I did want to mention that we originally had a committee that reviewed designs that really kind of built consensus around what you were seeing this evening. What was talked about was removal and storage of the current Robin Hood sign, and that there would be a larger discussion about where whether it's along Pine Street, where would it be appropriate to have more of a marquee or a sign, whether it's the Robin Hood sign reused or another type of sign that would be able to advertise events. Should that be located closer to Cannery Square, closer to this site? So I think there will be a larger kind of discussion specifically about that.
That raises a really good point, because in reading the materials, this was a collaborative effort of many other members of the community, including two city councilors. So there has already been quite a bit of citizen input, and as Mr. Shannon testified, there were open houses that led to this design. All right. So
I do agree with the trash can condition. I mean, although one of the pictures had a trash can in it, in there somewhere. So I don't know if there's already some maybe like along the sidewalk, not really part of this or something. Just, I would say just, I don't know how to condition this, but other than just if you're there, like think of, people are going to want to throw trash out somewhere. They're going to look for something. So just whatever's reasonable.
So a condition could be prior to final site plan approval, the applicant shall show the locations of, garbage enclosures on the site.
Is it on the site or ensure that, because adjacent to it, if the city already provides receptacles.
One right there, that's fine.
So, okay.
Because the intent would just be for just regular use. I imagine during festivals, they'd have to bring in additional trash cans.
Oh yeah.
Right.
This is just day-to-day regular parking use. There should be a garbage can someplace near there.
Okay, so do we need that as a condition of approval, or it's already included. So is there anything that needs to be included in the motion for speaking to that, Erica?
There does not.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there is one garbage can that is, and I'm on Street View, that is at the corner of First and Pine.
So it already exists.
Yes, there is a trash receptacle there.
Okay, so that
Probably
resolves.
fine then.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're in. Oh wait, just a second. Staff have anything to add to the testimony? Does any member of the commission have any questions regarding staff's comments? If there are no further questions, I will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. All right. If there are no other questions, we can entertain a motion.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for LU 2022-015 SPCUP Public Festival Plaza based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis findings and conditions in the staff report.
And with the modification to condition B1
And with the modification to condition B1
as presented in the staff presentation.
as presented in the staff presentation.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve LU 2022-012 SPCUP as modified in the staff report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Thank you, Kurt.
Commissioner comments. I would like to once again ask staff to provide us current code books and a printed copy of the comprehensive plan.
Yes, and we plan on providing you a copy of the most recent code updates. We are still working on those code updates with our municipal code publishing company, so we haven't received those proofs yet, but when we do, and I expect them here shortly, that we will be updating all commissioners with the updated code book and comprehensive plan.
Could we add a zoning map, a 36 by 24 zoning map?
Another large one?
Yeah, I have mine. I love mine, but it's very useful. You just lay it out and see where everything's zoned.
Yeah. I don't know how to get it faster, but we implemented some really significant design criteria and other items that are important. And then I would also like to ask what is being done to address the variance and adjustment code language that was incorrectly approved by council. So what we approved as a commission, where we reduced it to 5 and 10% in those adjustments and variances, was presented and approved by council at 10 and 20. And so we need to have that brought back before us on a legislative hearing, correct?
That is correct, and we are working on that updated code language along with other amendments to the code. And I was hoping to have a work session with you all on July 26th about this. However, I think we're gonna have to push it to the first meeting in August.
Based on the review of the code when I was talking with Eric about adjustments and variances and the 5 versus 10 and the 10 versus 20, I think we need to look at the other variants, because there apparently in the last type of adjustment or variance, there is no limit. We could do 100% variance, and I think we need to, when that comes back to us to review, we potentially need to look at that, or at least acknowledge as a commission and as a council that 80 to 100% variances are allowed in our code. So that was my only comment. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
All right. We tried it.
Yeah.
I think we tried for a long meeting.
Now 12:30. Was that